Hello and welcome to another episode of my Autism Diaries, my little berries. And in this episode, we're going to talk about something called echolalia, or lalia, however you want to pronounce it, doesn't matter. Basically, echolalia is where people repeat what has just been said by another individual, either literally, they may do their own interpretation of it. Sometimes it's seen a lot more prevalent in those with severe autism, where they don't fully understand what is being said, so they will literally echo right back what somebody has either just said or may have said in the past. Mostly it's when they've just said it, and they will keep saying it sometimes, or they will just say it back because they don't know what else to say. Those that are seen, I don't like to use this term, but high functioning, those that may not seem to have severe autism, will often use this tactic when it sounds good when said by somebody else, and it could be that we may be recalling something we saw from a TV program or an action that they did. It may not be verbal. That seemed acceptable in that situation, so we will employ that in another situation. We as human beings, we do mimic people. We do it all the time. That's how we learn. But we develop our own voice and our own way of doing things without literally mimicking. Echolalia is literally mimicking. That's where lack of social imagination comes in. When you're not really sure how to react to something or what to say, or if you have a limited vocabulary or a limited kind of response, you can use different things that different people have done. But that's sometimes where the problem is, because I've done that myself in the past, because I've heard somebody say something, I've heard somebody do something, and tried to do it myself. And social situations are so individual. What worked in one place doesn't necessarily work in another. I remember I was watching Home and Away when it used to be on ITV, and if anyone remembers the characters Shane and Damien, in one of them, Shane, I think, says to Damien, if you don't do something, it'll be your funeral. Now, I thought that meant another way of saying it'll be your fault, but I didn't realise at the time that actually that was kind of a threat. So I used it myself once, and yeah, it didn't go down too well. Sometimes somebody will make an observation about something, and a few minutes later I'll say the same thing because I'd agreed with them. Instead of going, yes, I agree, I would probably just wait a few minutes and go, do you know that over there? I think it's this and that. And it sometimes sounds like you're trying to claim what that person has said as your own. But sometimes it's a case of you don't quite know how to make conversation, and you're not quite sure how to react to something or find the words. It's easy for me to talk to the camera because the camera isn't a human being. I can't see somebody's face. Even though the camera lens in a way resembles a human eye, I know it's not a human eye, so I can look at the camera, I can talk to the camera, I can think about what I'm saying, and if I say something wrong, I know I can edit it out. In a social situation, that does not happen, and that's sometimes where people with autism can find themselves in a bit of a sticky situation where they're not quite getting it right as far as the neurotypical population are concerned. Sometimes when you don't understand what something means, but you hear somebody say it in a certain context and another situation sounds similar, you may even use that. That same person I talked about in my last diary is somebody who I grew up with who ended up turning out to be autistic. They heard their mother say quite a lot of the time, don't cut your nose off to spite your face. Of course, I didn't understand what that meant. And sometimes when people with autism, we take things literally. When you say a common phrase, you'll think of the literal interpretation. So I was literally thinking of somebody cutting their nose off. When I did something, not quite in the right context, this person said to me, don't cut your nose off to spite your face, and it was not used in the right way. Cutting your nose off to spite your face basically means if somebody says, yeah, you can have that pudding, but you can only have a little bit, you can't have all of it, and then that person going, well, I won't have any of it then. I can't remember what the situation was, but it didn't warrant that kind of response. And their mother then went and corrected them, and they never used that phrase again. I think it was partly because they didn't quite understand how it needed to be used. Sometimes out of a knee-jerk reaction, I have literally just repeated back what somebody has said and not realised I've done it. Like I was talking to somebody in a shop about, my Skyrim videos, and that person said, that sounds excellent, and I instantly said back, that sounds excellent. Oh, I felt so embarrassed because I'd said it without thinking. It was just simply like an echo, and I didn't quite know why I was doing it. Echolalia sometimes works But most of the time I found that it doesn't necessarily work, because you can't always use the same principles. I've taken things like common phrases and sayings and use of language at work, for example, where a lot of what I do when I talk to customers is kind of scripted. So it has worked in that regard. Um, but when you're in social situations, no. There are social rules, but those rules are bendy and wavy and flexy, and you have to get them right, but you have to get them right in the right context, and you have to worry about, that person's feelings, or um, you have to look at their facial expressions and their body language, and and listen to their tone of voice, and there's so many things going on. It's just so difficult, and sometimes mimicry can be a last resort somebody will use because it's just too much. It's a sensory overload, and often repeating something that you may have heard sometime before, something somebody said, can often seem like the best way to deal with something. I'm constantly trying to expand my vocabulary, and I'm constantly trying to come up with new things to say. If I genuinely don't know what a situation is, I won't say anything. I'm quiet a lot of the time, and sometimes when I'm encouraged to try and join in conversation, um, I'll struggle to come up with something. A lot of people who know me know that I will sometimes not quite know what I'm trying to say, and that I will hesitate and I'll speak slowly and I'll be seemingly searching for words. That reminds me of something that was on my diagnostic papers. The way somebody comes across when they're autistic can sometimes sound like they're fabricating something, or refusing to answer, or trying to search for an excuse. It isn't. They're trying to search for something to say that they believe will be acceptable to the neurotypical, even though it doesn't come naturally to the autistic person. I hope that gives you a bit of an insight to echolalia. And if there is another aspect of autism that I haven't touched on yet, or that you'd like me to revisit, please tell me. I had one subscriber ask me to do a second Sherlock vlog, and I did. I love hearing ideas from you guys, because knowing me, I'll end up running out of a few. So please don't hesitate to leave me a comment, or message me, or visit me on Twitter. I am Eryberrie on Twitter. On Tumblr, I am Eryberrie blog. And I also have a Facebook page, obviously Eryberrie. So come and join me there, come and like the page, and you'll be kept up to date with everything. And if you want to subscribe, go ahead. It's entirely your choice. And I'll see you very much later. Bye, everybody. Mwah.